Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Success Stories podcast. I'm Jennifer Shuffle, your host, and today I have with me Christine. Yes, I was right. I was like, why am I second guessing myself? By the way, that's always where I screw up, is in the very beginning right there. It was perfect. Then I just start over.
Like, start all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that at least once a month. If not, I don't know. It depends on how many I do. All right. Blah, 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 blah. And it's so funny. Okay. Christine Duque with Alonsera.
Alonsera, yep. You're
Alonsera.
good.
You want to pronounce the O, Alonsera.
Alonsera. The emphasis is on the A, not the O. Alonsera.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Success Stories podcast. I'm Jennifer Shuffle, your host, and I'm so excited. Today I have with me Christine Duque. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for her to share with all of you her story and her journey. It's a great one. And she is the CEO of Alonsera, and she is joining us actually from Southeast Asia this evening. So, morning for her. I'm so excited for this. Now, today we'll be talking, of course, about her business journey to business ownership and the challenges but best practices that she's also learned along the way. So we're really excited to get that sneak peek into what is it really like to be a business owner, and also her journey, because it's not a traditional one. Of course, if this is your first time to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe, because you'll want to get notifications like this whenever we have a new show drop similar to this one. And you'll want to mark your calendars for those Wednesdays when we do have those drops. So, Christine, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for you to share with everyone your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I'm excited to share my story. As you said, it's a very interesting one for sure.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it is. So tell us, where did you start out? Because it wasn't a traditional business school.
Definitely not a traditional business school. So I think first and foremost, let me explain what I do, and that'll just give people the what the. So I am CEO of Alonsera, as you had said, and Alonsera is an integrated strategic consulting company that runs a global AI center of excellence and a venture studio. So we are all about responsible AI and real world leadership with AI. And so kind of how I got here, right? I first 15 years of my career was spent in marketing, actually rooted in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then the next 15 years of my career, I was recruited by Accenture, and I helped start Accenture Digital, Deloitte Digital, and IBM. So I am that beautiful hybrid that balances the art and science of what we call technology and digital transformation. So I've got the creative aspect of it, which is understanding humans and people and how do you create those emotional connections with them. And then I understand the science part, which is, the technology and all that kind of stuff, which I was very quiet about wanting to be geeky, but I am embracing my full geek. And
yes, please, and I'm happy you do.
Yeah. But the art part is everyone says, well, how did you get your start? What was your major in college? And when I tell people that my major in college was opera and music history and theory, that I spent the first part of my life actually as a child performer. So I turned pro at 5 in the film. I was part of the Philippine Drama Company, and I did all the regional musical theaters, and then eventually moved to the US because I studied at Juilliard pre-college, and I went to Oberlin Conservatory of Music, and I was going to be an opera singer, and I was going to live my entire life in the arts. So that detour to the tech has been very, very interesting, but I think it makes me actually the best tech person because I have that empathy and understanding for humans and how to make those emotional connections and how to create better experiences as people are engaging with the technology, things that you probably don't think about, like, why do I keep using the app? These are my favorite apps. And that, when I do my check cashing, it's easy. Someone like me thinks about not just the technology, but your experience and how is that going to be better for you and ease your life and make it easy. So
Yes. Well, and from the empathy standpoint, being in the arts is hard.
it's hard.
It is and can be very cutthroat, and you learn a lot. So tell us some of the like stories or things that you really have learned along the way to then embrace to really be able to lean in with AI and to give that empathy and some, yeah, human
Yeah.
aspects to it.
So I think the first thing is that the arts itself, particularly music, has a real discipline to it, right? Like
Yes.
rehearsal is at this time, you're committed to this time, you have to practice. There's a lot of discipline and route around that. And so I think taking that application into work is actually important. Even the beginning of my career, showing up on time,
Yes.
not being late to meetings and being able to learn how to manage your time is really, really important. I think the second thing, I think naturally as musicians, music is all about patterns. And so you're able to kind of see patterns. And so to me, looking at a music score and looking at code is somewhat similar. Like I can see the patterns and all that kind of stuff and be able
Yeah.
to kind of distill that. The other thing I think that has been really important to me is that when you're an artist, you're selling yourself. So you're branding yourself. And so in some degree, like it actually made it easy for me the switch from being an artist and understanding marketing, understanding stories of brands and how to make those emotional connections, how to position that right to an audience and how to position myself to an audience. I think there's also the other dimension that's interesting about opera where it's the study of languages. So I've had to study languages in history. And so I actually speak 8 different languages, and running global business allows me to really understand culture and make that relationships with people. Because at the end of the day, when you're really thinking about business, any business, including the arts, it's all about people and it's all about understanding people, and how you understand people moves people into productivity. And that's really the most important thing. I work in digital transformation and I've been in the forefront of digital transformation for my career. So almost $8 billion in realized value in digital transformation and AI. Not a lot of people can say that. When people ask me what's the biggest barrier, it's not the data and the technology. That's 30% of the problem. 70% of the problem is a people problem. It's
Yes.
organization and people. And especially in technology and AI, it's all about change. And what do people hate the most?
Change.
Change. They're the most resistant to it. And so
Mhm.
really understanding people's fears, people's anxiety, people's insecurities, and being able to guide them through and walk them through that as a consultant to be their strategic partner. That's really what people are looking for, is a trusted advisor to move them towards better productivity, to make them feel comfortable with the change, to make them feel comfortable with the technology. And so being this odd duck coming from a very strong arts background into the technology is really not at odds at all. And so,
Yeah.
and it's exciting to be that artistic person in the technology space, by the way.
Well, and I mean, here's the other thing. People buy from those that they know, like, and trust. It's relationship building. And
Exactly.
so a lot of people have gotten very close to their AI and have really gotten and built them to be another person for them, which is so powerful. But yes, we also need to check it at times, like we do ourselves. But something that you told me the other day, you realized that there's this huge gap in the market between small, medium-sized businesses. Tell us more what you do and how do you fill that void?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned, right, I work Accenture, Deloitte, and IBM. Those are some really big, heavy names, and to even
Massive.
have that experience as an executive is pretty big. But after kind of a while, I was burning out. That was one thing. And then I saw a gap in the market where I saw companies, mid-sized companies that can't afford the IBMs and the Deloittes in the world. And they don't want to work with the IBMs and the Deloitte in the world. And as the technology starts to shift, I really started to believe that any company, regardless of size or budget, deserves democratized data and deployable AI. This is now table stakes in the world as it is, with food and clothing and all of our basic human rights. But that's kind of the way of the world is. And so that's why I started Alonsera, literally to be the new wave and the next wave for mid-sized companies. And the surprise is, also emerging markets, which is the reason why I'm in Southeast Asia right now, is working with a lot of companies, clients, and governments in emerging markets. And so that's kind of the journey of how I got here. And so there's been a lot of surprises along the way because I really just thought mid-sized companies America, and then the last 3.5, 4 years, the surprises of who your clients are and where your focus is, or even the fact that I was just a strategic consulting company when I started, and now I'm a global AI center of excellence and a venture studio, really in the forefront of the ethical implementation of AI and the conversations around policy and AI and data sovereignty. It was just like one of the biggest shocks of my life. But really, really exciting as well to be able to have a seat in conversations around policy. And by the way, the creative aspect of it is also then being able to pound the pavement for the creatives, being able to say, how do we protect the creative class as we start to think about policy and AI and technology in terms of copywriting and imaging and all those things? And then, but also then I felt like I spent the first half of my life trying to figure out data monetization and doing the things that, the polite stalking that you get when you start to get an ad after you've abandoned a cart and things like that, and being able to enable technology. But then being on the flip side of my career to say, I'm actually also now advocating for the consumer and the consumer's data rights and data privacy, because someone has to be the antagonist, like on the table, that to really kind of balance out and not think just monetization, how do a lot of the big tech, just make money. So it feels good to be on the other side of the table, but to anchor into the things that I believe in and that I value that matter to me and my experience and in my life.
So share with us a story or two that where you've really helped some of these small to medium-sized businesses go to the next level or to be there for them. And I understand as far as giving them policy and controls and everything, but how have you really elevated them within this process?
I think the exciting piece about this technology is that it's fast and it allows a lot of, especially small, medium businesses and startup companies actually be able to do things in half the time for cheap. Because let's face it, when you're a small, medium business owner, you have to be scrappy. I'm a startup, and so I had to be really scrappy. And so how do you actually get the insight, the advice, and be scrappy, and how do you use the technology? And so that's been really exciting for me, where I can actually do education and enablement, a lot of small, medium businesses, and really enable them to understand the technology, to figure out how to use the technology and how to use AI to your advantage. What things can you automate within your business so that you don't have to pay a third party to do certain things, right? Are there aspects within human resources, even just you as a person, what can you automate in your workflows today to make you more productive? It's simple as like automating email responses and, some things like calendaring. I mean, those are such huge time savers. And so people think that the fear about AI is that it's going to take people's jobs away. But I always say that the value of AI is to take these like $3 to $5 an hour jobs away from the $500 an hour minds so that we can actually be more productive. And I think that's really been exciting to me. So like I said, that we have a venture studio. So I work with a lot of startups globally to really help them, understand their business and how do they actually think about globalization and market expansion. But a lot of the times when you're in the startup mode, you're so focused on delivering your product out, and you're not even thinking about operationally your processes and how do you actually save money, save time to do these better things, to foundationally set your organization for success. And that's been really kind of one of my favorite things to do is, to work with startups and small, medium businesses to help them understand the technology and enable them. So not just really from a consulting implementation perspective, but more from an education enablement perspective, because this technology is moving so fast and no one's graduating from college with a real understanding of what this is. And so
True.
what I can do best is to help educate people and help them understand the technology, understand the use cases, and get them more comfortable
Yeah.
with the tech.
So would you help someone, say, set up an AI agent, or would
Yeah,
you, and educate them on that? Like, I guess, tell me a little bit more, and maybe our listeners, I know some of them definitely know what AI agents are, but instantly that's where my head goes because I'm thinking, okay, answering email, the pipeline, getting things up and going from a sales perspective, like on the front end, and then it raises its hand like, oh, I need a human, like insert the real Jen. Like, so I guess tell us a little bit more of what does that process look like?
I mean, I think the first thing I want to say is like people think, oh, artificial intelligence is limited to agentic or chat GPT. So I want to break it out and say, stop thinking about the A in artificial intelligence as artificial. Think about it in three different ways. The first A is, automated intelligence. So people forget that basic automation is actually AI. So what can you do within your workflows that you can kind of automate today to get that thing? So if you can get that right. The second thing and value around that, if you think about the A as anticipatory, what can it anticipate for you? When you think about the things that you use today, Netflix and Amazon does such a great job of it. You watch this, maybe you would consider this. You bought this, would you consider this? Would you want to go into a subscription? Things that anticipate your behavior is like the biggest thing. And when you're thinking about customer experience and when you're thinking about consumer goods, right, and what you're buying, anything that you can anticipate that experience and create that better customer experience puts a leg up on you. So think about the next A as anticipatory. The third A is augmented, right? We're sitting with so much data. How can we get to things really faster? Like for me, for example, I'm always reviewing different policies for something. I'm like, these are like stacks and pages of
They're
PDFs. So
massive.
whatever I can do to be able to call through that data quickly, to get a summary, to get things faster, is also time savings, not just from that, but from other data and numbers that you're running for business. But if you get, basically automated, anticipatory, and augmented right, what you really want tomorrow is that to be running in the background to make it autonomous. That's really what the artificial intelligence is. And people was like, oh, let me break that down. So yes, automating things in your workflows, not just, all this chat GPT or agentic systems. That's not the only piece of that. And so what people also forget is that you can't leapfrog to all this sophisticated agentic and, generative AI if you don't have your data foundations and you don't have your processes correctly. You can't just move that way. And so,
Yeah, it's such a shame. I
it's a
just want to
shame.
be here and then be here.
Yeah. And so I lived in New York for 15 years. So from Cincinnati moved to New York and I didn't have a car. So when I went to like
Right.
California, um, I had a bad habit apparently of not shutting the garage door. Like, hey, welcome, just take everything. And so that was where like really artificial intelligence and that home where that anticipatory in terms of my life where, oh, I know the garage door knows to shut down and after like 3 minutes if I forget to do it. So it just does that. Or the fact that I fall asleep in random hours and the lights shut down at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like these little things, like again, automated, autonomous, and anticipatory, like that's how it impacts me in my personal life. But think about how that can work from a business perspective. But that's really like where the world is going. So
Yes, absolutely. So let's lean into that a little bit. So,
yeah.
Christine, where do you see the business, say, 5 years from now? Like you've arrived. What does it look like now?
Yeah. So I really thought that, hey, there's a huge part of our business that does a lot of the implementation and solutions where we're helping people think about their technology stacks, how to integrate that, what are we implementing, all that kind of stuff. That's table stakes. But majority of our business, which is what I was really surprised at, really comes down to that education enablement piece. So I'm partnered with University of California, Irvine, where we're actually creating executive programs and corporate programs to literally do education. And actually I've also been doing a lot of that AI education for government officials. So I've hosted ministers of the South Korean government, and really helping them, because you've got executives, people like you and me who've been out of school for a really long time, sitting in positions
It was
trying to
totally
figure out
yesterday.
technology. Yeah, right? Like, I mean, how do you figure out this technology? But then it also requires a new type of leader to show up in organization. A
Yes.
lot of times you have a lot of leaders who get to their positions because they've paid their dues. They were the top individual contributor. They have the know-how, they have the knowledge. What's scary about this is that this is a equal playing field. No one really knows how to do AI. So how do you convince that leader who's so prideful around knowing what he does, and his leadership style is, I'll tell you what to do because I know it, and I'm here where I am because of what I know, and telling him that he needs to learn something new. That's really intimidating with some people. So like, it requires a new type of leader to actually be a little bit more vulnerable as you start to
Yes.
think about transformation, and bring people along and bring people together and say that, okay, we're in this journey together. I don't know it all, neither do you, but how do we figure this out? It's a very different way of doing business in comparison to how businesses and, top executives have gotten into their leadership positions and paid their dues. So it's intimidating, but it's a huge change. And so that's a part of the business that I never expected to really kind of bloom up, which is being in demand to come into organizations to not just educate, but really create these like leadership and change management components, to really help empower organizations to embrace change, and to, get to AI and adopt the technology faster. Because I've been in so many digital transformations where I've either written a 2-year roadmap to nowhere. Very familiar. Or I've implemented this sophisticated, Formula One Ferrari car, which is what I always talk about this. And you've educated no one. So no one knows how to operate the system. So no one's adopting to it. Or you've got this beautiful piece of technology and, you're basically parking it in the garage, or you're driving it in first gear. And so that, exactly, that enablement, adoption, change management component is always forgotten, which again goes back to what? People.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We say an action coach, an educated client is the best client, which is true. And we always look for lifelong learners, because those that are willing to learn are really able to step out and really grow a business and scale to a whole nother level.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the business itself. How many employees do you have today, Christine?
So we're 5 partners. There's about 12 of us in the United States, and then we've got folks in South Korea, as well as the Philippines, and then Malaysia. The interesting part of how I've developed the business, if you think about Big Four consulting and the massive benches and people that they have sitting there, that's a really huge amount of overhead. So when you think about the cost of Big Four consulting, it's expensive overhead, right? It's
Yes,
almost
it
like
is.
50% plus an additional margin. And so I've kind of cracked this where I have really solid delivery partners. So other companies that I have partnered with, and actually had partnered with in my previous life, and I was in Deloitte and IBM when
Nice.
we were oversold and didn't have enough bench. And then create a consultancy where like the strategy, the pieces, and the mind of really big thinking comes from the people within Alonsera, and then where we actually work with implementation partners as needed to bring in the expertise that we need in a very kind of trusted way from our clients. So that's a one way for us to actually, cut the overhead spending, but
Yes.
also actually be really, really agile in the way that we work, which is, global working from home, and a new way of working where people are looking for the flexibility of being
Right.
able to work anywhere, do everything. And so as I always say to me, like, we're all adults. I'm not going to hold a gun to your head if you did, or ask you if you did your homework or you did your
No,
work. Like, get it done, right? And
right.
so, it's and that was something kind of an adjustment. I used to feel really guilty about like taking naps at 2 o'clock or like running out to the gym in the middle of the afternoon in the middle of a workday. And I'm thinking, And it just took me a moment, like, I run global businesses. Like, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right. No, you've earned it because you're working around the clock in order to have the flexibility.
Exactly. And it was something that I realized, and I was in big foreign corporate, that, even if I ran the global businesses, there was an expectation, whatever time zone you are, that you were committed to the time zone. And so I just used to just work it through. And it kind of that was part of the burnout, was like, I can't do this. I can't work
Right.
the 24/7 clock. And what is that? And what is it for me? And what does that feed me? And the
Right.
thing about that I realized with corporate is like, they will take as much out of you as you're willing to give, but no one's going
Oh,
to stop. No one's
and
going to tell you to stop.
non-apologetic either.
Exactly. And so it was kind of like, 2 seconds of, I was starting to get really sick and not understanding what was kind of going on. And this was like post-COVID, my body was just like, no,
Shutting down.
shutting down. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't do this. So yeah.
And it's crazy how when our bodies start to show the signs and the symptoms of the burnout, because the statistics are out of this world when it comes to the medical bills and everything. But when our bodies then start to shut down, then they're asking, well, what do you mean? You can't do this. You have to take a sick day? What's that? And then the guilt and the shame and judgment all starts to come flying in, and then it only makes you sicker.
Yes. And I think what was also really hard was that when I said I was sick and my doctor put me on disability, that was, kind of the moment of, you really need to stop and you need to kind of figure this out. And it was also kind of moments where I was also within the moment where I decided to start Alonsera was when I was sick and I was on break. But your body says no. But then also, like, when you're dealing with certain sickness and stuff like that, people are like, well, are you waiting for your hair to fall out or something like that? And it just was. And there are just certain illnesses, which is kind of, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease of all things that I got from COVID, and from long COVID in 2020. And unbeknownst to me, I've always been really, really healthy. But that was a wake up call to say, pause, stop. You can't run you cannot sustain what you were doing in that kind of schedule and that kind of
Right.
tempo, and it needs to stop. But it also gave me a moment to pause, like something has to shift and balance out of my life. I think for the huge part of my career and the very early part of my career, and I'm very grateful for that career, it was, but I probably lived to work. And so, and this part of my life, and I think about kind of where I was and what matters. And we were talking about this, especially when you're dying with COVID. I'm not waiting for, it's not, someone's pinging me while I'm in the hospital. Where's the deck? I'm not thinking about the deck. I'm fighting for my life right now.
Right.
And it starts to crystallize, like, what matters, who matters, what are you, what is that, what is on the tombstone and my grave?
Right.
Because it's not going to see CEO, like who I am and what matters to me in terms of relationships. And so, I think you and I were talking about this, like when you look at John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, it doesn't say like president or tycoon of Standard Oil or, Andrew Carnegie, it says loving husband, loving
Right.
father, those are the kind of things. And so that kind of really came into me as like, what do I do in this point in my life to rebalance that? Because I need to live life. I need work to fulfill me, but, and enrich my life and not the other way around. So.
Absolutely. Oh, well said. And I'm so happy that you're on this side of the fence and that you have figured it out and paused, because unfortunately not enough people do sometimes. So, and they just keep running
No,
themselves into the ground.
yeah, I think if there's anything that we learned from the pandemic, I think there was a moment during the pandemic where it felt like a lot of people really figure out the humanity in it, and then it switched really quickly when things started to open up, where companies were demanding employees to come back to work 5 days a week, but the rules were stricter, right? We're counting badge swipes. We're looking at your IP logins. I've had clients look at that to make sure that you're actually sitting in the office.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and what was really impacted the most by that were actually women, because we're caretakers, and underrepresented minorities, because they tend to live more in multi-generational households, and to try to navigate care and the
Yes.
flexibility that is needed. And that was actually taken away from all of us in the pandemic.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard to figure out, how do I survive, within a corporate setting, and how do I balance out my life? And I think people are looking for something different, which is the reason why I think this new generation is looking for more flexibility. Like this idea of, like, you're asking me to sit at a desk 9 to 5 and like kind of come in and not have that flexibility. People are really kind of debating that because they realize that the technology world and the culture is different, and that people are really looking more for balance and fulfillment in their lives, and
Yes.
not this whole thing of survival where I'm just, living to work so that I can survive. You know.
Yes. Yes. And I remember during COVID being at my desk, I would start way earlier because I didn't have the commute. I just had to go around the wall to the other room. And then after dinner, logging back in because it was right there.
Yeah.
Where before I had to commute to the office and I had to go into my office in order to do what I needed to do. And being home, it was truly a nightmare, but it was also something that I had to adapt to. And as a business owner, let's be very honest, I have to watch myself and I have to make sure that I'm maintaining some kind of office hours because I have a loving husband and 2 kids. And so making sure that I'm present for them, but also even my parents who are also aging, to your wonderful point. So tell us, what is something that the business has allowed you to do or has gifted you with because of having a business?
I think it's gifted me with flexibility. And I think the other piece of it is having the right people and partners. That's really, really important.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when you're working in corporate America, you can't choose. You really can't choose the people and the teams around you and all that stuff, and you're trying to navigate through that. In consulting, a little bit different. Like, you can choose who you want to engage with and who you don't within a consulting world. Like, I joke around, I always had the black book of people that I'm never going to work with ever again in the company. But I think for me, it's like I've got really great business partners and supportive business partners. So, and I think we all work really, really well as a team. Where someone just, we're adults, right? And says, "Hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm having an episode. I just need to take a couple hours, whatever." No one ever questions, no one guilts you into it. Like, do your thing, you know, and create that kind of flexibility and space for yourself to be able to do that. I think the one thing that, I really like is that I think in corporate America, I'm always looking for like next pace and really being ambitious and motivated to go to the top. And there are also some other realities about what it feels like to be an Asian woman in corporate America that, I can't get into. I wrote a whole book around it, right? And so, that was a real struggle for me. And so to me, it was like, when's the next award? And so I'm fighting against myself to get to that next thing. And so I think I stopped myself from, wanting that next title, wanting that next milestone within the corporate America, and being able to give myself the freedom to be able to just, focus on what matters the most, the work that I love to do, the impact that I'm able to make for clients, and clients who want me to be there.
Yes.
Because that was the other thing in corporate America. Like, here's the Fortune 500 list, go win them all. And then I had that whole thing where it's like, you know what? I don't need to win them all, and I don't want to win them all. I want
Yeah.
to work with clients who respect what I bring to the table, where it's a true strategic partnership and we can kind of go into that, instead of like having a client who says, "Okay, I pay you $2 million," but treats myself and my team so poorly, which, just creates a culture where people just want to leave, and attrition within a
Right.
company. And that's not healthy either.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are some of the things. And I again, let me just be very controversial. I think there was a part of me at one point in my career where the hustle, the badge of like, I stayed up all night and I did this and this deck and whatever, and I
Yes.
really put the nose to the ground, was a badge of honor to wear. And I think at this point in my career, what I've realized, like, no, me showing up at my healthiest, rested, happy, means that I show up my best self for my
Yes.
teams, my people, my clients. How's that for a concept, right? Instead of looking very haggard, or just like this whole thing that there was this badge that I worked really, really hard, and here's the effort of what I did. it kind of, I think, comes back to like a little bit of like, I kind of got this from, the arts, where as musicians, you kind of, it's like you just work and work and work and work, practicing and practicing and practicing, whether you're a ballerina or like, a dancer or, a classical musician, where this practice,
Mhm.
the reality is no one ever sees the practice, right?
No.
The 3 minutes, the 5 minutes of a performance, you see that. But I also love, seeing that, from the Alyssa Liu and other athletes like Simone Biles that are going against this dimension of like the hard work, pain, sweat, tears is what's going to get you to success, when they're actually saying, no, actually, the hard work and the physical work is important, but balancing out with the right mental state and coming into something with joy will actually bring you more success. Like, I love that narrative.
Yeah.
That's changing within corporations and within, sports, especially when it comes to women right now. I'm like, yes, I am going to be more successful if I bring my authentic self, and I'm actually coming here just being happy and
Yes.
doing what I love.
Yes. Well, and to that point, we may see the 3 minutes or 5 minutes of a performance and have our own bias, and we're judging that, but yet it's taken them years upon years to get to where they are. So, how long have you guys had the business now?
Um, we've uh, we've had the business for about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So it's not that long. It's tremendous amount of growth in a very small period of time. But I will say this, you don't start a consulting company from scratch. I think
No.
part of the ease of the business was the fact that all of us were coming in from, a very big prime of our careers, with established, reputations and know-hows to do this. Myself in particular as well, having run and built those practices. And the funniest thing is that I wanted out so badly of the last executive job, and I was looking for my next move. And I had every offer under the sun. And I was sitting down one day with a couple of my tech partners and people who've known me for a while. And they basically said, why don't you just start your own business instead of jumping into the next thing? I was like, no. I'm like,
What do you mean? That's not normal.
and literally, like, I sat with it, and I'm like, a month later, I was like, okay, I'm gonna incorporate, I'm gonna do this thing, and very kind of naively. But I think part of my confidence in starting my own business is that I had people who were very supportive about the idea of starting my own business, who really saw the gap in the market, who saw the fact that like there's no reason why I couldn't do this, and so that was kind of where it was a timing thing too, right? I think depends on what kind of business that you have, what you're looking for. For my kind of business and for where I am, it definitely was a timing thing. It's not something that if you're coming out of college and you want to start your own consulting company in the scale that we're at, that's not what I would recommend. I would say go spend some time at Deloitte and Accenture and get your foundations better. But
Yeah.
for me, it was the right time in my career to do something different, to bet on myself, where I've had a little bit of that kind of establishment. It's one of those things, like, you can't just leapfrog yourself into
Yes.
into
Yes.
something, right? But again, all businesses are different, right? If you've got the IP in something, like, I mean, if you look at Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and you go at the time of his life and the time in the moment, right? There is a time and a moment where you're kind of called into it, and where it makes sense, where the business
Yeah.
actually establishes into something new, or it's a right way to do. But for me, early in my career, I tried to do some freelance consulting. It didn't work out. And I think where it is right now, where I do have an established network and an established reputation, to be able to do this, it made absolute sense, and made it easy to really talk about the kind of success and where we are for the last 3.5 years.
Yes. I love that. And that's exactly my point. You don't just all of a sudden have this business that just happened last night. Like, that's not even realistic. People may just now be starting to hear about you, but that's also because you're a global organization and you're really, fighting through a whole bunch of different walls that
Yes.
we never even had in the past. So, I love what you do, but we are running out of time, unfortunately. So I do have some rapid fire questions. You ready?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. What is the key to success for you?
People.
Absolutely. Yeah,
People can't do it without anyone else, and you have having the right people around you, I think is the most important. So,
absolutely. So, what is your one piece of advice that you would tell other business owners?
um, surround yourself with the right people. Know that relationships are going to change. So at the very beginning of your business, make sure that you have the right operating, models and procedures and the right contracts in place that define the relationship, that define the partnership with anyone that you're in business with. That is so important. Here's the thing. When everything is going well and you're at the honeymoon of the beginning of business, oh, it's great. But
Yeah.
when things go south, things go south. It's really painful. And people and relationships that you think that are, indestructible can easily be destroyed from a business perspective if things kind of go south, or if, you didn't know that that person suddenly decides to run away with money or whatever that is, and gets into their greed of something. Things happen. And so I always say to people, make sure that you've got the right legal entities in place when you start your business,
Yes.
and partnerships that define the relationships of your people to protect you, but also kind of protect the business, because you have to protect, it's a business, right? And it's kind of funny when you think of, when I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly the kids in college, they're so cute. We're starting up this business and all that kind of stuff. I've worked with it with my roommate. I said, well, do you guys have an agreement? Like, if you're putting up the money, if the business becomes super successful and you're the one who put up the money, and this person is, taking that in, that's where you've seen this happen over and over again, where people don't define their relationships, where they don't kind of protect themselves. Mark Zuckerberg had that during Facebook. Let's talk about Tesla and what Elon Musk ended up doing as well, taking into that. And so there's all these, and even Steve Jobs at one point in his career, right, is got, taken out of Apple from his position and then kind of came back, because at the end of the day, there's passion in it, but you got to have the businesses to protect yourself. And I think that that's really, really important.
Yes. So, as coaches, we always tell everybody draft up those documents during that honeymoon phase. And even when you get the questions, we don't need, yes, you do,
Yes, you
because you
do.
just never know what will happen. And unfortunately, if somebody passes, then is it that spouse that then takes over their spot? Like, how do you have that drafted? Like, it is very serious and it's something you got to figure out. Love it.
And, and businesses are its own thing.
Yes. Yes.
You may have a really good idea, but this is something I've learned. It has its own, a life of its own. And when you start to kind of bring people in together, you're creating something that's a little bit different. And what you've, thought of from day one is going to look so different. And, and being able to kind of let that go and let it breathe life on its own is the most important thing. And it's hard for a lot of founders and business owners to get to that point of letting their idea go. And I've seen businesses go south when you've had a founder who, is so stuck in terms of the success that it started with, but cannot innovate and cannot let it go. And that's the piece about businesses. It constantly evolves as well, because the only concept we have is change. And so your businesses are also within that same formula of, of change, and having just good foundational, benchmarks and locks systems in place, are so important to protect you and also to protect the business.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. So here's a fun question. If you had a little bit of magic dust to sprinkle over one part of the business, what would it be?
Uh, I think right now it's the education and enablement piece. I want more magic dust there.
So tell me more. Is it to educate more people or?
Yeah, I think I think I really love the fact that we're walking into government organizations and, and corporations, and getting executives feeling really empowered and excited. And I feel like there's a lot more that needs to get done of that. And I think that that's the highest demand that we have right now as well. And so being able to spread more magic dust there, to be able to do more of it, to be able to really scale and impact, and it's important. And I think I think the measure of success comes down into people, like the people who are running and delivering those programs are really, we're not talking about just like straight up educators that are coming from, their doctorates, et cetera. We're actually talking about real people and a balance of education. And so to me, that's exciting because I feel like we have a program that actually now brings in education and real world, real world scenarios and real world stories of how you actually do this and bring that into, corporations and governments and people and leaders, which doesn't really happen. And I think that's the gap in education today. You've got theory, but no, and reality being too far away from each other, that a lot of recent grads are really having a hard time transitioning from academia into the real world. And where the opportunity is right now is to, continue to kind of bridge what real world is and what the, understanding of theory is. And so that's probably an area of the business that I want more magic dust on, just because I want to be able to deliver more. And I really want to be able to, impact more than just executives and governments that we're doing right now, but even kind of the younger generation or the new graduate generation, to help them understand that leapfrog from, being a graduate to, starting in a new company and really understanding what that is in the new is probably the next piece. And I see that with startups and the venture studios that we have, where there is kind of a need for some of that just education and hand holding. Because, they don't really use Microsoft Word and Teams in college.
No.
Excel.
Yeah, we actually had a class, but then not too long thereafter, they had gotten rid of it. And then we were getting co-ops, and we had to teach them as employers how to do this stuff. And so then we let the University of Cincinnati know this is not acceptable. And they brought it back.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, no, this is the way businesses do run. Like you
Yeah.
have to have this.
And just even simple things like business ethics of how do we do things, or how do we
Yeah.
communicate and talk to each other, right? I had one analyst one time when I was in one of the big four who was like, well, I escalated to you. It's a code red. I said, okay, how did you escalate? Well, I teamed you. I said, did you pick up? Did
Oh
you
my
go to pick up
goodness.
the phone? Did you call me? Did you email me? And so some of these like basic communication skills, it's not even like hardcore things. It's just leadership communication skills. Some of this basic like business coaching is so needed, especially with this new generation coming in. Technology is great, but no one knows how to communicate anymore. And honestly, also no one reads. So,
That's true too. Yeah. Hey
so I
Siri,
think
read this to me.
it's a good area to spend a little bit more magic dust, because people that come out of that just realize like business fundamentals are kind of important. And I think when your business and even mine, just taking that moment to say, pause for a second, AI and technology is great, but what are you trying to solve for?
Yes. Fact. Oh, I love that.
Is important, so it's like, I can do this, automate things, do things, give you the shiny object, but what are you trying to solve for as a business? And is this the right thing? So everyone says, oh, I want the Amazon experience. Well, the Amazon experience is everything. Which part of the Amazon experience do you want? Do you want the instant notifications that get your things there? Do you want the anticipatory thing? Which part of that experience do you want? And it's so big. So when people say, I want AI to do something
Oh,
like that, or want the technology to do this, well, what part of this do you want? And so,
right.
I think there's a little bit of specificity around what it is. And it goes back to the arts, right? Like, you get the role, you get something, well, yeah, I get this all the time. This is my favorite thing now in the Philippines. I'm like, oh, you're an opera singer. Can you sing Phantom of the Opera? I'm like, and I'm like, that's musical theater, but yes, I can sing it, but I'm more inclined to probably sing Mozart. Or just getting it right, like understanding. They're like, oh, opera, like Nessun Dorma. I'm like, that's a tenor aria, really made popular by Pavarotti. I'm a soprano. I don't sing that, right? Things like that, right? It's just very,
Yes.
very
Oh my
kind of simple, where
goodness.
people just don't know and don't understand or cannot articulate what exactly is it that they want. And I think that that's so important in business.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So before we get to the final question of the day, share with everyone, how can they get in touch with you because they need to learn more about AI, get their policies put together, and yet articulate to you how and what they need?
Yeah, so Alonsera is easy to find, ALONSERA.com, Alonsera to be the wave. So just send us a note at info@alonsera.com. To find me personally, I'm easily findable. So like go look for me at Christine Duque, do a Google search. All of my social media handles are at Christine Duque, one word. So it's the same for every single social media handle. So come, find me on social media. I'm actually pretty approachable and looking forward to connecting with people. So
Excellent. Well, this was absolutely awesome. I can talk to you all day, but the final question of the day is what is most inspiring to you today?
right now, I'm so inspired by Serena Williams. I'm very au courant right now. Like, I mean, the comeback for the doubles, going into Wimbledon, going in back with her sister Venus, and then just yesterday announcing that she's playing singles. Like, I mean, I think this is someone who's just like, passionate about what she does, not letting her age or anyone else's opinion kind of define her, and exactly just what we were talking about, just doing exactly what she loves and living life exactly the way that she wants to, with the things that she's passionate about on her terms and not what everyone else's definition is. And so I'm taking inspiration from Serena, because I think in this point of my life, it's like there's no roadmap of being an entrepreneur, even for what I'm doing and for the kind of business that I'm actually putting together.
Right? Yeah.
And so the only thing that I know that I'm doing is that I'm forming connections and relationships with people, and I'm going through things and doing things because this is what I love and what I'm passionate about. And so where I am actually in a point in my career where I'm just happy doing what I'm doing, and I know that this is what I love to do, and this is what I'm really, really good at, and a way to kind of marry all of those parts and pieces of my life and my identity in this moment of my life. And if I can just continue to be kind of authentic and live through that passion and know that, like, go this direction and the money and the success would come. That's probably where I'm at right now. So yeah, Serena, let's go.
I love that one. Well, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your story and most of all, you sharing it with everyone. And so, thank you so much for being vulnerable and, yeah, sharing with us all the burnout. It's a very big thing. So, of course, I encourage all of you who are watching, save this show, come back to it, watch it again and again, because Christine really had some really great tidbits that you're going to want to come back to and listen. And of course, get with her on your AI needs. So, like and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications every time we have a new show drop like this one. Thank you all who joined us today. Greatly appreciate you. And of course, thanks again to Christine Duque. We absolutely love having you. And so, please take time, reach out to her, and we really, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.